Good morning, everybody. It is 2023, and so I'm here to answer the most asked question of the year. Is Alchemist still good? And the answer is yes, it's still extremely, very, very good. You see, the thing about Alchemist is while the first few levels are a little shaky, which is probably why most people get turned off of it, once you get around level 6, it starts to pick up the pace quite a bit, and then once you hit level 12, ooh, it's like that feeling when you're cutting a piece of paper with scissors and it just starts to glide. Because Alchemist at level 12 gets the ability Multi-Vial, which is an attack, well, spell, that deals a tremendous amount of area of effect damage. But on top of that, they also get the ability to bypass all immunities. Now, the way the immunity bypass works is you hit a monster with a damage type, so like if you cast a fire spell, it hits the monster with the fire, and it does no damage. However, they're now no longer immune to fire, which means you can then cast your second fire spell and deal full damage. Well, Alchemist has this little spell, I think I talked about it before, called Multi-Vial, where the first vial goes in, hits the monster, deals the immunity and gets rid of the immunity to the damage, and then all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3, 3 more hits on top of that. Pretty much every single monster that is immune to any damage that you decide to deal is still going to die. And it is at this point that Alchemist goes from something you have to kind of think about how to play to becoming Multi-Vial Simulator, where you walk into a room, press Multi-Vial, next room, press Multi-Vial, next room, press Multi-Vial. It is an extremely competent leveling character, you just have to get past the shaky parts at the beginning. And as you continue to grow in levels, I don't really need to explain why this stays good, but bypassing all immunities and Multi-Vial still being good all the way at level 32, being able to layer on with Draconic Incarnation Dragon Breath and Ruin and Greater Ruin, and having a pretty reasonable defensive profile given the fact that you get a good amount of crowd control. Flash Freeze for freezing targets solid that are nearby you, Vein Freeze for freezing targets that are long range, and everyone's favorite Turn to Frog, where you can just frog some constructs or other monsters with abysmal saves and just get rid of them from a fight. Alchemist has been good since its release, and it will continue to be good into the future unless something changes or gets nerfed about it. But you might ask yourself, how come nobody plays Alchemist? And it's the same reason people haven't played Alchemist for the longest time. It's because it just has a uninspiring start. The beginning of Alchemist is generally pretty painful. It's a slow experience, and you will feel like you can't really do any damage. Level 1 and 2 are abysmal. My general strategy for leveling Alchemist in the early levels is get a party and cast heals at them until around level 4 or 5, because realistically, you just don't do that much damage. Now, there are a couple ways to make this easier, so for the Alchemist at home who wants to get started after hearing about the excitement of level 12 plus, here are some tips I have for you. First is use your Inflict Admixture spells, that is Inflict Light Wounds, Inflict Moderate Wounds, Inflict Serious Wounds. These spells deal tremendous amounts of damage, and their area of effect, and they are low cost. All of them will save you a lot of time moving forward. Now, yes, you can't do undead quests, because obviously the undead will just heal from these spells, but it's fairly easy to either avoid those quests or have a couple spells on the back half just to help crush through some undead, even if it takes a little bit of extra time, or, as I said, consider grouping. But the second pro tip I want to give you is that in the early game, the Bombardier tree is really not that great. You get one single spell-like ability, which is nice, the Vial Throw spell-like ability, which you will use probably until you're about level 12, if not all the way up to level 20. But the rest of the tree, it's good, but it's not really helpful right away. Which is why usually my recommendation is to use the Apothecary tree and go 11 points deep so you can grab the third core, the spell-like ability for Curative Admixture and Inflict Admixture. That Inflict spell-like ability you get in the first tier, as well as the Inflict Serious Admixture you get in the third core. Both of them will be your offensive backbone for the general leveling portion that you're going to be experiencing through the game. And then either be a gnome so you can get Color Spray from the gnome tree, or take a Greater Color Spray out of Feydark Illusionist. Both of those things are going to be very, very good in helping you lock down targets and get more efficiency out of your spell points. Greater Color Spray from the Feydark Illusionist tree, for example, only costs 4 spell points, but it makes monsters helpless, so they're taking 50% more damage from your attacks. And they're not attacking you, so you don't have to heal afterwards. So you can cast Greater Color Spray, the monsters become helpless, and then you just whip spells at them until they're all dead. At which point after that, you're going to go and swap out your points once you hit level 12, You can just drop all the points out of Apothecary at this point because you don't need them. Take the Elemental Bypass, and you've already got Multivial, the 5th level spell. So then, for min-maxing, which elements should you use? Generally, the best alchemist elements are poison and acid, or cold. All 3 of those are pretty good. For the leveling process 1 to 12, acid is going to be your go-to. Acid and negative. Now, you might think you want to go poison, but the problem is poison is resisted or is immune to all of the monsters that you have difficulty dealing with negative. So you would think there'd be synergy there. You could just equip the negative items, cast the inflict spells and the poisons, but you still can't do anything to an undead. So that's why I recommend you go with acid for the leveling process 1 to 12. And then after that, from 12 to cap, you can pick any of the elements and they'll all be pretty good for the leveling process. As far as the actual end game and how you should build into it, there are a couple ways to go about it. The main ways are poison, acid, and cold. I find that if your stats are low, you're a first life character, you don't really have a lot of gear or know-how, you're going to want to go with poison starting at level 12 all the way up to cap. It might seem weird, but the benefit of poison is that all of your spells become fortitude saves. And monsters have a tricky effect called evasion, which is if they make their saving throw against something that gives them a reflex save, they take 0 damage instead of half. Well, with the fortitude save on poison spells, you can just completely sidestep that, so you get to deal at least half damage to every monster you attack, and generally half damage will be enough to kill some things. And even if you can't get the best gear at the end game, you can't get your DCs high enough, again, you're still going to always be dealing some amount of damage. Now, of the 2 elements, I would generally recommend either cold or acid. For the more starter alchemist, acid is a great option because not only are pretty much all of the acid effects also conjuration effects in the whole game, so you'll find a lot of synergistic acid and conjuration items as you move forward for helping get all of your DCs and stats up, but also Dragon Breath acid, so the Black Dragon Breath, uses conjuration for its DC, so you can just stack conjuration and have everything kind of go together. The reason why you wouldn't want to use acid is because when you use a cold, you can get access to a filigree set called the Frozen Wanderer that gives you 5% more crit. It's just more crit than anything else in the game, and that's why Cold Druid exists, and Cold Sorcerer and Cold Alchemist. Doing 5% more critical chance is really, really good when you're already over 50% critical chance. It really just locks it in there. So as far as your 12 to 32 or at your end game, I would recommend picking either poison if you got low DCs, you're not sure what to do, acid if you got some DCs, but you're still just figuring it out, or going cold for the full min-maxing. Now you might notice, if you're actually looking at the footage, that my character is a Lightning Alchemist. I went with Lightning Alchemist for 2 reasons. One, I didn't know what race to play, and then somebody was like, oh, if you're a Tabaxi and you go Lightning, you could be a Thundercat. So I said, cool, that sounds awesome. So I just did that. And then 2, I like the lightning sound effect you get in-game, like lightning spells. They have that like blast sort of sound, and I just like the sound effect, so I ran lightning. There's no reason to do lightning over anything else, and in fact, acid would have been better in pretty much all cases for what I was doing. So I'm not saying go lightning, but I just did it because I thought it was cool, and my character had no issues with the leveling process. Now that's enough of me talking. It's time for me with the build. Just like you can't go wrong with a steak and a baked potato for dinner, you can't go wrong with meat and potatoes Alchemist. It's pretty straightforward. Bombardier, you hit people with spells, there's really nothing wrong with that. So how do you do it? You put all your points into intelligence, because that's really all you need. You put your points into constitution, because that's really all you need. And the rest of these stats are garbage. They don't do anything for you. So max out these 2 stats, ignore the rest of them. And you might say, but Strimtom, if I don't have wisdom, my will saves are going to suffer. And also, if I don't have dexterity, my reflex saves are going to suffer. Don't even worry about that, because Alchemist, for some inexplicable reason, gets 2 feats. First, they get an ability called Insightful Courage at level 8, which lets you use your intelligence for your will saves. Why do they get that? I don't know, but they do. On top of that, they also get the defensive feat, Insightful Reflexes, for free at level 2, which lets you use your or your intelligence for your reflex saves. So you don't have to worry about any of that. So, intelligence, constitution, and nothing else. As far as skills go, you get a lot of intelligence, so you can take almost all the skills. So it's hard to really say what you should take, but basically, Haggle is good for money. Jump is good so you have lots of jump, because jump casting is good. Search is so you can find stuff. Spellcraft is your damage, and use Measure Device. Outside of that, you can just do whatever you want. You want to tumble around? Take Tumble. Do you want to see invisible targets as you don't have a perfect memory of where every single monster in the entire game is located? Take Spot. I don't care. Do whatever you want. I guess balance, if you don't want to get knocked down, doesn't really matter. It's unimportant. As far as your feats go, pretty straightforward. I started by grabbing the Meta Magic feats, Quicken, Maximize, and Empower for my spell-like abilities. I actually started with Maximize and Empower first, and then I got Quicken at 6, so it was Maximize at 1, Empower, and then Quicken at level 6, so Maximize, Empower, then Quicken. The reason for that is because you get some spell-like abilities early game that can't be quickened, so it works better to do this, and your spells cast fairly quick in the early game anyway. After that, I went into the spellcasting feats and picked up the Spell Focus, Conjuration, and Greater Conjuration, because those are your bread and butter. That's the main stuff that you're going to be doing with this character is Conjuration spells. And then I also picked up Heighten later because it was pretty good. As far as your epic feats go, you have 2 routes. You have the Ruin route and the non-Ruin route. I did not go with Ruin. I wanted to try it out and see how it felt. I didn't try it out at endgame, which is on me, and I probably should do that to give a more thorough review. But for the leveling purposes, it doesn't really matter which one you take. Grab Wellspring of Power, because this is the best buff in the game. You just press the button, you do a crazy amount of damage. I grabbed Epic Spell Focus Conjuration, as well as Emboldened Spell. This increases my Conjuration DCs, and this increases all my DCs by 2, and then Intensify. And then for the Destiny feats, I'm a Lightning Alchemist. Whatever element you picked, just take the spell power for it. Crush Weakness to deal extra damage to the helpless. I grabbed Deific Warding because I don't have any other secondary damage types. If you already have lots of physical magical resistance rating, you could take another Epic Spell Power for some more spell crit, like Epic Spell Power Positive if you really wanted. And then finally, Spell Specialty Transmutation is what I went with, so that way my character would have more Transmutation DCs, which would be better for crowd control. And then for the legendary feat, I went Sign of the Plane of Earth because it is Conjuration and Transmutation. Yes, I'm not an Acid or Poison Alchemist, so I don't get the bonuses here, but that's okay. I'm going to try not to worry about it. As far as these spells go, you're basically going to need an elemental spell, so I went with Lightning, and then also stacking on top of that the Inflict admixtures, so Inflict Light, Inflict Moderate, Inflict Serious, Inflict Critical. You can kind of get that going. The best course of action is obviously to play Acid, because basically nothing in the entire game resists Acid, and will get you through everything. There's like 1 Clay Golem in Tear of Deccan that you have to avoid, but outside of that, you're going to be able to blow up everything. Oh, and the Arcane Oozes in The Prisoner, at level 8 quest. But outside of that, you can just blow up everything, and then by the time you get to level 12, you can avoid all immunities in the game. So you're pretty much just going to take offensive spells and then backfill with defensive spells after you've leveled up and you don't need those lower level offensive spells anymore. Until you get to level 12, at which point you get 2 things. 1, Multi-Vial of Sparks, one of the best damage spells in the game. This spell's so good that it's still really good, and it got nerfed twice. That's how you know it's good. It got nerfed twice, and it's still really good. Pre-nerf Alchemist. Oh, man. Anyway, we got the multi-vial. Just pick whichever element you're using and kind of go with it from there. At the same time, your character is also going to acquire this ability, Weakening Mixture. You just pick the element you want, and now you bypass immunity. And the reason why this is so powerful is because you have to hit a monster with a spell to strip its immunity off of it. So, what you do is you throw out the multi-vial. The first spell, or the first hit of it, is going to remove the immunity, and then the other 3 vials are going to deal full damage. So it's really crazy like that. So it's really nice. And then also for your 6th level spells, Elemental Combination is just good damage, and you get to heal yourself, and then Gold Skin. I took Gold Breath because it was cool. Anyways, let's look at enhancements. So you're going to notice that I spent a lot of points in Bombardier, and then also some points in Fade Arc Illusionist. If you don't own Fade Arc Illusionist, that's fine. Also, if you don't own Tabaxi, that's fine. I played Tabaxi because that was the past life I was going for. I'm getting a Tabaxi life. It's not relevant. Also, I didn't know what race to play, and somebody said Tabaxi, and then I picked Tabaxi, and then somebody said, yo, you can be a Thundercat, so I played Electric. That's the thought process I went into Electric Alchemist. You don't have to do that. As I said, Acid is the best one, and is going to serve you better than everything else. Anyways, now I did put points into Bombardier, picking up a lot of the good stuff along here. However, that's not where I initially spent my points. One of the first things you want to get in Apothecary is this right here, the Inflict Light Wounds Admixture. This is huge. The damage is massive on this. This is going to be what carries you through the early game. You want to get this as soon as possible. This is one of the best things. So you want to get the Inflict Wounds spell-like ability. Then you want to grab one of these spell vials here, and you want to grab, so whichever one you're using, so say you're using Acid, you want to grab this, and you want to max this out. So you want to max out this and this first. Once you have that, I put more points into Apothecary, and I got the admixture here, because this also gives you a Inflict admixture of the same kind. and you can use Inflict Serious and Inflict Light Wounds admixture to do most of the damage during the leveling process. I'm not going to lie to you, Alchemist is slow, and from level 1 to like level 12, it can be a little bit rough, and specifically level 1 to 6 is tough because you don't have a lot of very consistent good damage. But once you get to 6, it's not too bad with the Inflict Serious and the Inflict Light spell-like abilities really putting in a lot of work. Now, I also used Fade Arc Illusionist and grabbed Greater Color Spray, so by the time I was level 6, I had Greater Color Spray, and I had the Inflict here, and I had the Spell Vial. So I had 3 spell-like ability, or 3 damage spell-like abilities, and I could stun everything. I personally really like Greater Color Spray on basically every spellcaster, since when the monsters are color sprayed, they can't do anything, so they're not moving, and they take extra damage, so it saves you points on your spells, because this only costs 4. So if I hit like a whole pack of hobgoblins with this, then I kill them in 1 fireball, then I'm actually saving spell points instead of having to cast 2 fireballs. Plus also you're not getting hit as much, so you take less damage, so that's kind of the idea there. If you don't own Fade Arc Illusionist, don't worry about it, just start putting points in the Bombardier tree. And that's kind of what I did. And then when I hit level 12, I had 11 here and 11 here. I didn't have enough points to actually get to the top of the Bombardier tree, but that's when you get Multi-Vial and your character goes crazy. So what I did is I took all the points out of Apothecary and kept 11 in Fade Arc Illusionist, and then I filled out the Bombardier tree, picking up the Weakening Mixture. I will say this, in terms of the stats in the Bombardier tree, I think that the Spell Crit is the least valuable during the leveling process because it's only 1%, so you get 4% Spell Crit for 8 action points, which is a lot to spend when you can get like 9 reduced cost of Maximize or Quicken, which makes your spell significantly cheaper and is more damage per spell point than the crit would be. So the crit here is definitely like the last thing you should take in the tree. You should take it, but it should be like later on into the experience. And as I said, if you don't happen to own Fade Arc Illusionist, that's fine. You can just fill out Apothecary, grab more intelligence here, grab some of the defensive stuff. The crit, Spill the Bad Stuff is a great utility attack because it can basically cause every status effect in the entire game. It's like one of the Malboros from Final Fantasy. You basically just hit them with Bad Breath and they get every status effect. So it's a pretty cool ability. I don't really recommend you put any points for the most part in the Vial Chemistry. The only reason you put points in the Vial Chemistry is if you're playing as a poison build, to bypass poison immunity, you can use Wave of Poison, which has a 6-second cooldown, and anything you hit with this will become vulnerable to poison, so you can poison them. The downside is this is a Ceruleite spell, so if you happen to use this, it will take you out of your reaction state, which you want to be orange all the time. Some people do get intimidated by the Alchemist reaction state. I think I can pull it back up here. Oh, I actually don't have one. Interesting. There it is. Some people do get a little frazzled by the reaction state stuff. You're a Bombardier, so you want to be an orange. How do you get into orange? You cast red spells and yellow spells. What are those? Damage and healing spells. So don't worry about it. You're going to be an orange. That's just the natural state of things. Oh, do I want to cast Vein Freeze because it does damage and freezes stuff? Cool. That's a yellow spell. Do I want to cast Multi-Vial? That's a red spell. And now you're in orange, and that gives you spell power, spell damage, reduced spell cost, all the stuff you want for your spell casting. Let's talk Epic Destinies. Now, I leveled with Electric, so I used Macrotech, and I grabbed Tonkins at the beginning. I also got Primal Avatar and grabbed Mantle of the Sky, and then I grabbed Dragon Breath. So those are my first investments. 7 points here, 8 points here, 8 points here, as fast as I could to get all of this stuff. The Mantle just adds damage to your spells. Dragon Breath is awesome, and Tonkins cost only 12 points, 12 mana, but it has no saving throw on it. And it's not a Epic Strike, which means you can use this and this at the same time. Then once you get to 23, you want to take Evergreen as soon as possible. This will give you nearly infinity mana during the leveling process and is quite useful and something I used. And then after that, I filled out Draconic Incarnation as you see here. And then once I filled out Draconic Incarnation till I was done with this, I then put points into Macrotech, and then I filled out Draconic Incarnation, and then anything I had left I filled out where you can see in Primal Avatar here. So you have like a pretty basic structure is you want to have this, this, and this right away. Then at 23, you take this. Then at 26, you want to be up here. And then after that, you just fill out the rest of it. And that's pretty much how I ran the character. As far as items that you can look at to equip, your character is a Conjuration user. So you want to find items that have Conjuration focus. You can either do this generally by getting an item like the Prince's Scepter or something from Feywild that gives Spell Focus Mastery, Insightful Spell Focus Mastery, or the, was it the Night Mother's Scepter, whatever it's called, the Macabre Scepter from Ravenloft, which also has the same effect. That can all be quite good. Or you can do what I did is Caneth craft something like a Conjuration, Insightful Conjuration Focus item here to help you with those Conjuration DCs. Also, you want to make sure you have Spell Power item. I have a Glaciation item. The only ice spell I cast is Vein Freeze. This is one of the spells I didn't touch on too much before, but Vein Freeze is a 4th level spell that is insanely good. Even though it is a cold damage spell and you don't think you need it, it freezes monsters with a Fortitude save, and monsters get frozen all of the time. So usually I use Flash Freeze for freezing monsters. It's very, very powerful, but it's melee range. On your way in, say you're playing on a higher Reaper mode, you can lob in a Vein Freeze. It's going to freeze about a quarter of the monsters you hit with it on average. So if you hit 8 monsters, you're going to freeze 2 or 3, which is still helpful. And then you can go in with the Flash Freeze in a little bit, just with that extra little bit of safety. So I had that for that, and then the Scepter of Magnetism because I want to have some lightning spell power. And then, as I said, Intelligence, Constitution. I got a cloak with Intelligence, Insightful Intelligence that I crafted. I have a ring with Constitution and Insightful Constitution that I crafted. No problem. You want Sheltering, so physical and magical sheltering to reduce the amount of damage you take. If you happen to have Insightful Sheltering, that's good. Healing spell power is also nice for being able to heal yourself. And then your kind of basic defenses. Fortifications, that way monsters have difficulty critically hitting you. Items that give you like hit points and stuff. So I have like Profane Life Force here for some extra hit points. These items are level 5. Oh, geez, what's this? This item's level 5. This item doesn't even do anything for me. I can just take it off and my stats don't change. So anyway, you know, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of the gear that you want to use. So anything that gives you bonuses to spell DCs is pretty good. So like this gives me Profane Spell Focus, which stacks with my Conjuration and Insightful because it's Profane. So it gives me that extra bonus. Looking for stuff like Quality, like the Spinneret from the Slave Lords is also a good option. Or the Black Satin Waste from Shard. You have a lot of flexibility there. But that's generally how I built the character, and that's how I kind of ran it through. As I said, the hardest part is going to be the early levels. At the beginning, you're going to struggle quite a bit because level 1, 2, 3 is just the worst part on Alchemist. It's terrible. But there is a solution here. Well, 2 solutions. 1, Byron Scout Sword. He's a barbarian hireling you can buy on Korthos Island, and he will do the entirety of Korthos for you, and a good chunk of the harbor. So check him out. And 2, what you do is you press the social key, you join somebody's group, okay? And you go, oh, hey guys, and you just walk around and follow people. If you want, you can even take like some of the heals, the low-level heals, like the Curative Admixture, and just heal people. They'll love that. And then all of a sudden, you get that XP, and you'll be supporting people. You hit level 12, and then all of a sudden, everything in the game is deleted instantaneously. This spell is so good, it's like oppressively good. You will, once you get multi-vial, you'll go from being somebody who's supporting the team and kind of working with everyone else to making it so that everything dies so fast, no one has any fun. And isn't that why we play video games? To kill things so quickly, other people don't even get the chance to have fun? Yeah, me too. Anyways, that's all I have for you today, so thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, make sure to follow that channel and smash that like button because it helps out a lot. Let people know you know, about the stream and the channel if you're interested or something. I don't know. I ended my last stream or my last video with like a weird comment that made me uncomfortable, so I'm not going to do that this time. So I'm just going to stare into the camera until it fades to black.